I would say all the jobs are definitely in China, with the Uyghur Muslims producing a lot of the corporate American goods that lecture us on racism here in the United States, which is something that people need to realize as well. But I don't know if we want to go into the next story, but I mean, they infiltrate not only these kind of intellectual institutions that kind of set our young children to be where they are right now. China has a huge influence on the universities and colleges, but they also infiltrate politicians in more ways than one, as we found out today with the Chinese spy that slept with
Swalwell.
Oh, no.
Swalwell has the nerve to say cheat an election
yes.
when he had a fundraiser organized by a Chinese spy.
Yes, and there's accusations by Donald Trump Jr. that allegedly this spy had relations with Mr. Eric Swalwell, which, by the way, Eric Swalwell was one of the biggest proponents of Russian collusion. If you remember, he was out there on all the media networks. They loved him. He was ranting and raving. There's a foreign government infiltrating our government.
Yep.
There's a foreign government controlling everything.
Luke,
the Russians are colluding.
He farted,
and he farted
on TV while accusing Trump
awkwardly
of trying to cheat an election.
Exactly. And at the same
away.
time, he was being infiltrated at very high levels
government.
by a Chinese government, which he had very close dealings with.
Projecting.
Now, this person's very interesting because they are describing her as a honeypot. She slept with many prominent government officials, and she escaped to China as soon as the FBI came looking for her. They saw that she somehow miraculously escaped, which is absolutely mind-boggling.
So the Biden family's compromised. Dianne Feinstein had a Chinese spy working for her office, and now Swalwell and many other people had a spy working for him. Secretary Pompeo said that Chinese governments infiltrated every level of government.
Not just infiltrated. I mean, this spy was deemed an important political figure in California. She was orchestrating a lot of the campaigns, a lot of the fundraisers.
Fundraising for Swalwell.
Exactly. So there's individuals right now saying Swalwell needs to resign immediately since he's been infiltrated. The mainstream media right now is slowly patting him on the back, saying it's okay, he's a victim here.
He was given a briefing by the FBI. They didn't do that for Trump.
Yep.
When Trump was accused of Russia, they just started spying on him.
The FBI called him and notified him that he was infiltrated by the Chinese government. And we still don't know exactly what this person has. We don't know what information they were able to gather. This person also did fundraisers for Tulsi Gabbard, of all people.
Wow.
Yes.
No way.
So this is a major big story that's going to have a lot of ramifications, because when you look at the Beijing professor, he also talked about a political figure that helped him out tremendously that now has Chinese citizens and now is back in China. So we saw this Beijing professor literally talk about this, gloating about this, acting very happy that this happened, and now we have this story that just came out there. And I think this probably happened a couple weeks ago, maybe even a couple months ago, and now we're just finding out about it because there's a correlation with it.
You're just making me more pessimistic about the whole China thing.
Well, I mean, I'd rather know the truth and reality that we're facing than be blind to exactly what's going on, because
Luke,
we have to understand our institutions are corrupted to the core, and they need to be replaced immediately.
Listen. If you just praise the glory that is the Chinese Communist Party, then you'll get to be a wealthy party member. You'll have a nice loft atop the tallest building.
I wouldn't
just
feel
right,
imprisoning
Just
the Uyghurs. I wouldn't feel right imprisoning the poor Hong
what if
Kong
it's
people.
You? Would you rather go to the gulag yourself? All you have to do is give in. Just give in.
No, thank you. No, never.
That's what's happening, though. It's the way people feel. It's a path of least resistance.
Yeah.
Why bother fighting against this machine that is gaining strength and taking over when you can just give in and be rich, right?
I mean, that's how they won over the elites. So
yeah.
Well, we're talking about the spying program that was revealed today with the Chinese honeypot that infiltrated more ways than one a lot of U.S. government officials. What do you think about that? Because a lot of people are saying this is room for Swalwell to resign. Like Swalwell needs to resign. Do you think that's legitimate? Do you think there's any legal merit in that?
I mean, it's not a legal argument. It's a political argument. I think he should resign. I think this should be looked at like,
I think he should have resigned a long time ago.
Like you were compromised by a Russian spy in the middle of the Cold War. Yeah, time for you to resign. Yep. Like but I'm in general think a lot more people in our government should be resigning.
I think they should all resign.
Right, like,
and term limits,
except for Rand Paul,
retiring from public life. Like, why hasn't Bill Kristol retired from public life?
Seriously.
Yeah. Or Henry Kissinger, of all people.
Well, he got fired by Trump.
Yeah,
his organization did.
He's 90. Doesn't he have grandchildren? He can hang out with them. It's fine.
Yeah.
Doesn't it seem like Trump is? I'll say this in my opinion. Trump is doing everything he's doing. He's acting as though he's not going anywhere.
I mean, I think that's it. I think it's a front. Honestly, I think he'll, remember the dude was a billionaire and he gave up the life of a billionaire and he'll be returning to the life of a billionaire for the most part.
Yeah, but I don't know. The TDS individuals are going to go after him, like the state level.
Right. The state prosecutors.
There's a bunch of them. They're nuts. Like we're like that's why I'm saying, man. I can't imagine everything just goes back to normal the way some of these people, like these Democrat voters, think is going to happen, because.
Yeah, they're like the calls for unity. Like, I'm sorry, like you don't get to call us Nazis one day and then suddenly have me turn around and sing "Kumbaya" with you.
But they think it's going to calm down when you've literally got, Lynn Wood and Sidney Powell, for instance, saying don't vote Republican.
Oh my gosh! I mean, that said, like, and there's stuff like I'm seeing like calls for martial law, and like I'm not for any of that. Like, in that respect, I'm just like, count me out. Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like,
we got to be honest here. If the Republicans were accused of stealing the election, I think half of America would be burned down by now.
Oh yeah, sure, right. Yep. Like that. I mean, but that's also like the consequence of that. Like, if what you're calling for is like martial law and a revote. And if you actually prevailed, then half of America would be burned down.
If Trump succeeds in his efforts and becomes president, it's going to be Antifa times 10 times 100.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I mean that's not independently a reason, right? The question is, like, the reason I oppose that is not like, oh well, Antifa is bad and they'll do bad things. It's not, we shouldn't let that control our behavior and decision making, but. That doesn't mean I want to live in a country with coups. Sort of. What do you
look? If Trump on January 21st is a regular guy again, the New York's going after him like crazy, and the media smears and lies about him. It's intense.
I don't know. I mean, it's just you remember everybody hated Nixon and then they stopped and they forgot after the Ford pardon. I could even see a Biden pardon of Trump, honestly.
But that's federal level. What about the state level? The state level is the issue.
They can't pardon the state level, but I think the sort of urgency and onus to keep going after Trump is gone if he's not president anymore. I think
perhaps
that's I mean, I might be wrong, but
I don't think so though, because I think they need their boogeyman. They need their villain. And you know what the articles that are coming out right now from the left say? In order for us to heal, Trump must go to prison.
Yeah, no.
A lot of hot takes coming from the left on that one.
They've been calling for things like truth and reconciliation commissions,
tribunals.
Like
so
listen,
he's
like Hideki Tojo or something.
I'll say a couple things. You want to you by all means call out the people saying we need martial law, right?
Yeah.
The Democrats have already implemented it in many states.
Oh, over COVID restrictions.
Right. Mm-hmm. And then you add that to the fact now they're saying tribunals for not just Trump but his enablers, and some people have gone so far as they put a list of their supporters. So that would be you, me, or even Luke, even though Luke's not a Trump supporter. It doesn't matter. You've called out China. You've been critical of the left. Therefore, it's good enough for them. Ian, who's actually kind of a hippie dude, they'd say, doesn't matter. He's on the Timcast IRL show. Put him on the list of enablers and supporters. So if we're at the point where we already have martial law locked down in many places and states that's violating the Constitution, they're calling for truth and reconciliation commissions, tribunals, and things like that. And then on the other side, they're calling for martial law. Like, how does this go down?
I mean, I don't know how it resolves. I think, my hope is
collapse.
Yeah,
I'm not saying hope. I'm saying like the resolve. Like,
right, like if you're making predictions, I don't know. I mean, I think, and there's a lot of other, the COVID reorientation of wealth to the big companies versus people.
People having nothing left are going to snap. Like that viral video of the Pineapple Hill woman, where she's got this outdoor seating area that Newsom's like, you can't use it, and then right next to it is Hollywood food production services, totally fine. Regular people are looking at that, and their brains are going to explode.
Yeah, and I wonder if the consequences for that are finally going to be felt in a world where Trump isn't around. Like, I mean, he does have this effect of like sucking all the air out of the room, and that in terms of media coverage. I mean, the thing about it is really deeply offensive that Gavin, these politicians can't adhere to their own guidelines.
And they don't want to.
It's also important to note that we saw record levels of protest under the Obama administration when he first came in. We saw Occupy Wall Street. So that's also another factor to really consider here. And also that a big swath of the left is not really impressed with Biden at all. But I was going to ask you, how do you see this unfolding in the worst case scenario, and how you see it unfolding in the best case scenario?
I mean, worst case, you get, I guess like Democrats are going to be in control of the federal government, and Republicans generally don't do like full scale rebellion, right?
And they don't do cultural institutions.
And they don't do cultural institutions, but they also don't do like Antifa type stuff in general. Like there isn't, you don't see the sort of burning down of the cities and.
But
So
how would you? Let me know your thoughts on this. I think we might see, Joe Biden, for instance, he wants to ban all online sales of guns and accessories and ammo and things like that. He wants to do what you
bullet registration and a $200 tax on
every gun NFA
and any
What is it? National Firearms Act? Is that what it is? Or
yes.
Well, that's why we need to make sure we don't lose the damn Senate.
Well,
right?
so what happens then if he does this? If the Senate does this? If they pack the courts? I wouldn't be surprised if a bunch of jurisdictions, small towns, all of a sudden had right-wing militias putting up checkpoints.
Sure. I mean, I think that would be a point where you'd actually see the sort of rebellions that real serious anti-government activity that was sort of hinted at in the 90s under Clinton, but that might become like a really big thing.
And that's why we had the what was it? What were the two? You had Waco.
Ruby Ridge.
Yeah, but I think my guess is that's ultimately going to be just talk. I don't think Biden's going to sign new gun legislation. I think Democrats.
You don't think they'll pack the Supreme Court?
I mean, I think if they had the power, they would do it. And I think the big problem there is I don't know if Biden will do stuff at the federal level, but what I expect will be in a world where the court is packed, DC versus Heller gets overturned.
What is that one?
That's the court decision that establishes that the right to bear arms is an individual right and not a collective one. So
the collective right would be like if there's a militia, then you're allowed to be in the militia with guns.
Exactly, and it's scary that decision's even close. Like that, that it requires real bastardization of the grammar of the Second Amendment.
Well, have you read the original Second Amendment?
Oh, the one that says that we can do whatever we want with guns. It's like that Parks and Rec. Ron Swanson. Like this is
when they were initially proposing the Bill of Rights, there were like 17 articles that were proposed.
Mm-hmm.
The original Second Amendment said something to the effect of, if someone chooses not to join active duty militia or military, they will still have the right to bear arms. Mm-hmm. And they took that language out, I guess, because there was a concern about it could potentially mean you could avoid conscription.
Mm-hmm.
So initially they were like, you can bear, a well-regulated militia being necessary to, for a free state, the right to bear arms shall not be infringed. And if an individual chooses not to join or be part of a militia, they shall still have the right to bear arms. And they were like, wait, get rid of that part because it makes it sound like you can avoid conscription. And we need conscription. Because at the time, if you were an able-bodied male, it's like, you're going to war, buddy. So they get rid of it. Now we have these arguments, which I think are completely in bad faith. If you actually look at the history of the Second Amendment, we had privateers, we had corsairs. Like a regular dude's like, here's my battleship I can use to blow up a French, trade vessel. Regular citizens had cannons on their houses and properties and things like that, so they could. Mm-hmm. Now it's like, you can't have any of that. And that's the argument. But anyway.
Also defund the police because the police are bad and really just like let yourself be at the mercy of people who would do violence to you.
That's why I think what we're talking about is fifth generational warfare. Disarm the people and disarm their local police. Why would you do that? Let me tell you this. In these West Coast places where they're very prominently doing this, Portland, Seattle, places in California, it's already hard enough to get a gun in California. Now you've got defund the police. What do you think would happen if you had Northern California, nobody's armed? Well, Northern California is fairly Republican, so people probably have long guns. But let's say you have a city. Very few people have guns, and the police are now defunded and fractured. Dystopia. Anybody can walk right in.
Just dystopia. I'm from California. I would never move back. And it's sad to see what's happened to the state.
I think if they get the Senate, and I do think they'll get it. I do. Because Trump's not on the ticket. Look at 2018. They didn't have with Trump supporters are not Republicans for the most part.
Yeah, but Stacey Abrams lost in 2016. She lost to Brian Kemp.
In 2016?
Yeah. Sorry, in 2018.
That's true.
I still am Georgia's a red state in general. I think it just had a particular coalition, sort of like Utah. If like Utah were a closer state, Utah was, very Mormon and had a big chunk of, Trump underperformed the normal Republican performance in that state. So I think Georgia's kind of similar in that respect, where you've got, that big suburban Atlanta population.
Since you're a betting man, what odds would you give on Georgia going Republican?
Going Republican, I'd say, 70% chance, 75% chance.
Wow.
I think that's what the betting odds are right now. It's like 70 something.
Sounds about right to me, right? Like, when the funny thing is I didn't bet on the election before the election because I thought the odds were about right. I think Trump was about a 2-1 dog or something like that, and I thought that was right.
I have to say, either way, it doesn't look good because if, the Senate is by a majority of the Republicans, how much dirt do the Chinese have, especially with their honeypots, on one politician to persuade him or to push him and to do whatever they want?
And they've been doing some crazy stuff. They decided I still don't understand this and why they would even consider it. They did the Mike Lee's immigration bill where he wanted to like remove country caps. Like, guys, get a grip. We're trying to win the Senate here, and you're out there, you're pushing liberalized immigration policy when there's a republic.
That's why I don't even think the Republicans are going to do enough to defend the country.
I don't expect much out of them. I just expect them not to do things that are, disastrous and catastrophic. Because the way I look at it is Democrats want to completely remove the ability for Republicans to win elections. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've read the book, It's Time to Fight Dirty. I might have recommended it. Mm-hmm. I don't know. But basically, what do they want to do? Why do they want to do it? Pack the Supreme Court, add more states that they can control the Senate permanently.
That's how it goes.
National automatic voter registration, voting day a holiday. They want to completely
universal mail-in voting.
Universal.
And the argument is we want to make we want to make it easier for people to vote, and that's just not true.
Yeah.
They're trying to strip away election security. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, and but the end goal here is permanent Democratic control. And they thought they almost had it. They thought they were going to get it. One of the and that's actually one of the arguments why I don't think the whole thing was rigged, in terms of the voting machines are rigged. Well, if the voting machines were rigged, why didn't they just get a result in line with polling? Democrats underperformed public polling in the run up to the election. They could have
yeah, the polling was nuts though. It was insane.
But
you can look, if you want to play, it's easily explained in terms of the Trump supporter more conspiracy mindset. The polls were propaganda to demoralize voters, saying Trump's going to win, don't bother.
Sure, I agree.
Then when it came to actually, as Trump has said, this is their opinion, that he ended up winning so well that they panicked and had to really go crazy on, cranking out the fake votes.
Just so story, everything.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. There is an explanation. The left is saying right now, if Biden cheated, then how come the Democrats lost down ballot? Well, because there's a bunch of undervotes, votes that were just for Biden.
Right. I mean, and I think there's plenty of cheating on the fringe, right? I still think that, I watched poll watchers get denied entry. I watched how frivolous, the behavior of these Democratic poll workers was. And I'm like, these people could have, there's no moral thing that would have stopped these people from doing some amount of cheating if they could get away with it. The question is just what could they get away with? And I think, you end up getting away with things like coerced absentee votes, duplicate votes, the sort of, and then maybe some.
Well, they were in Philly. They were putting up those signs saying, "Here's who you should vote for."
Yeah, that's sort
super
of. But
illegal.
it's the weird, it's like the cheating on the margins or fraud on the margins versus fraud at the core. And I think that I haven't seen any good evidence of fraud at the core. I don't think there's proof of the Dominion allegations. But there's
that's so wait. You know what really bothered me about the Dominion stuff is that I even said this on the show. I got really mad about it because the Dominion stuff and Hammer and Scorecard was a red herring. It was here's what happens. There will be some dirty politician and they'll get caught doing something illegal, and when someone starts sniffing too close, what they'll do is they'll throw out some crazy idea to throw them off the trail. And then instead of saying, I caught this dude doing drugs, it turns into crazy pizza cult in D.C. And now the real crime is they're laughing, saying, we tricked those people. How easy. So right now, when you've got actual irregularity and impropriety, Trump's suing and trying to be legitimized in his claims. The single worst thing for Donald Trump in all of this was the lawsuit from Sidney Powell and the Dominion claims. Because what Trump needed, and that's why a lot of people, it's funny, they're claiming that Sidney Powell's a Democrat and Linwood's a Democrat, and they're trying to subvert Trump. I tell you, man, I was reading a post on Reddit, and they said when it comes to a coup, the one thing a leader and the person staging the coup need is legitimacy. The current leader needs to tell everyone, I'm in charge, I will always be in charge, listen to what I have to say, so that the lower individuals, the police, the law enforcement, military, listen. What the other guy needs in the coup is legitimacy in the same regard. Here's why I'm actually in charge. Listen to me. Trump comes out and says 682,000 votes. No one was able to observe. What's going on here? Matthew Brainerd's Voter Integrity Project. Look at all of these votes from people who live in different states and voted twice. That's legitimate. Then all of a sudden, Sidney Powell comes out with this typo-laden Kraken lawsuit that sounds crazy, that has, it's almost impossible to back up except for a bunch of YouTube videos and a bunch of weird videos popping up. And Trump loses that legitimacy. The media jumped on that in 2 seconds and tried making every claim from the Trump campaign about the fringest and craziest conspiracy to delegitimize his claim that he actually won. And it worked.
Yep. Yeah, no, those lawsuits are a disaster. They were, and I had people in my mentions constantly, who knows if they're real or not, honestly, but people in my mentions being like, how dare you say that this won't work? And it's just like, because I'm a lawyer and I can
These people
read a
are real.
brief.
The people are real. I know people in my life. I've talked to people who are adamantly convinced the Dominion stuff is real. I'll tell you what, maybe, sure, but listen,
it's voter suppression too for the Georgia thing. Not sorry to interrupt, but
right,
like you're suppressing your own voters when you tell them that the election is completely rigged. And
you see what happened with Ronna McDaniel when the lady was asking her, like, why should we even bother voting? It's rigged. And she's like, no, you have to vote. Then you see Sidney Powell and Lynn Wood. Not only did they delegitimize Trump's claims strongly, not completely, they're also now telling people not to vote for the Republicans.
I mean, it's just, this is the suicide caucus, like the sort of, we should just commit electoral suicide because we didn't get exactly
maybe they're accelerationists.
Maybe they are.
They think, look, the Democrats take everything over. The sooner here's the problem: frogs boiling in a pot eventually just boil. But you throw boiling water at a frog, and the frog's going to jump and run away. Maybe that's what the accelerationists think.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, maybe there's some big giant strategy, but really, I think it's just a giant PR exercise from people who've gotten high on their own supply of PR.
But what about Trump? You think Trump's trying to win, though?
I mean, I think he's trying to win. I think he's, he's been a businessman for a long time. He's a guy who's litigated a bunch of cases to the end. So he's probably just like, he's doing what he does. He's like any other businessman. He'll litigate hard as long as he can until his appeals are exhausted, and then he'll comply. That's what I think.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. We do the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. So come back to check us out when we go live. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, and we are also available on all podcast platforms for free if you want to listen to us there. Thanks for hanging out, and we will see you all next time.